Pierre Alexis Dumas, creative director of Hermes, was asked, "Man, isn't Hermes expensive? Isn't it so costly?" And this is his answer. He goes, "I've always heard that Hermes is costly. It's not expensive." He's like, "That's right. It's costly. The cost is the actual price of making an object properly with the required level of attention so that you have an object of quality. Expensive is a product which is not delivering what it's supposed to deliver, but you've paid quite a large amount of money for it, and then it betrays you. That's expensive." So, this you're right.
Buy cheap, buy twice.
Yeah. Buy cheap, buy twice. Wow. It's not expensive. It's costly. Good things are costly.
All right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. You got Jack Butcher, Trung Phan, Bilal Zaidi. Boys, big week. Lots of things to talk about. Before we do that, got to call it out, lads. 4 years of NIA this week.
Unbelievable.
By the way, this comes out tomorrow, so Wednesday. 4 years. How you feeling? I want to hear some of your favorite moments, boys. Just let's go down memory lane a little bit.
I know what everyone's favorite moment is. Like, well, let me guess. At the count of three, let's just say it at the same time. This is not rehearsed, people. What was your favorite episode? 3, 2, 1. Sailor.
Sugar-powered Tesla. Yeah. No, I mean, I will say that was the most memorable, but I don't know if it was my favorite. There were other ones that I probably enjoyed more, but that was obviously very...
Well, look, can I explain the sailor why it was so funny?
Manifested.
Yeah,
100%.
That was the entire running joke of like this. We should have like. There's a world where we just shut down the podcast after episode. It's like just a massive running joke.
That would be the most entertaining outcome.
Like we started it as like a COVID joke, like with all these people starting podcasts, like, and we had such a good time hanging out with each other, and like we said, it's just like it forced you kind of stay up to date on podcasting, and it's definitely gotten better. We all have, I think, gotten better at this art of quote unquote podcasting. Not to say that we're professionals or anything, and I still talk over you guys, but now I have a proper mic, so that kind of works out. So, but the Michael
internet
Saylor
still goes
episode,
down once an episode.
The internet still goes down. The Sailor was just hilarious. It was just a running joke we had within our chat for literally 18 months to 2 years, and then it wasn't like the greatest thing ever. It was just hilarious because it capped off the running joke.
Yeah, 100%.
Shout out to our boy Tyler, by the way, who hooked it up. Tyler D. Dot.
Legend, yeah.
That was amazing. Yeah, go ahead.
D. Dot. Jack, what about you, mate? Any member? I mean, you said it perfectly in our group chat. You said, I've got it here. You said lots of memorable moments. Bored apes to now. That's probably a good contrast to where we've gone from you showing me and Trung this life-changing moment. Yeah, 3 kids since then as well.
Oh my, 4. Yeah, actually, no. We started with
we
added 3 kids during the
pretty much.
Dude, Jack, unbelievable, man.
That's a pretty mad one, right? That's a big one. Yeah, I'll call out Tom Osmond's episode. That felt like that was obviously a friend of the pod and great dude, great hang. But the ETH rock, like that was the height of the NFT.
That was a very NIA episode. That was a very NIA
what was happening. That was incredible. Yeah, lots of good like.
What is the state of rocks, by the way? These rocks. What is going on with them? No, I'm actually serious.
Let me see. I'll get you a price.
Are they still the Picasso of the NFT world?
No, that's visualized values. That's Jack's own work. We got the OP pen and all of Jack's work is.
Well, the CryptoPunks are they? And let us know about the CryptoPunks. Are they holding up?
I'm actually.
Punks are still going. I'm still holding probably 70, 80 grand.
I think I've still got a cryptoed in there.
Yeah, the
cheapest CryptoPunk is $69,000, boys.
And that's only because Ethereum's dumping. Like that should be double, right? That should. If we look at the value of Ethereum,
limited supply.
That's why I'm giving you USD prices. But I can tell you right now, EtherRock, the lowest listed EtherRock is 555 Ethereum, which is high 6 figures. What's that?
Oh, it's
800, 900 grand.
Store listed, of value there, man.
Listed. That's the list price. The offer is 35 ETH, which is $56,000. So you could, if you own an EtherRock, you could accept an offer for $56,000 this second, boys. So there have been better store values in the world, but they've also been worse.
Not investment advice.
Best stores of value. Yeah, that's the. Well, Jack, the other thing you did in our group chat, you asked ChatGPT. I hope you don't mind me saying all this, but yeah, you asked ChatGPT what was the price of Bitcoin the day we started, and what did it say? It was something like that. Might have been the last all-time high.
That was an all-time high.
No.
Or something.
It wasn't 69 when we started. I bought at 30.
It hit.
The first time we did it for fun.
No, you bought no, you didn't.
Yes, I did. 100%. If you go to the episode. Yeah.
Bitcoin was 30K. Oh, mate, you can't trust these LLMs, man.
Dude, they suck at math.
It is weird. Yeah. The math thing is kind of crazy. It seems like something they should be much better.
Well, it's because they're not thinking from a physics-based world. They're like literally guessing what the next
prediction tokens.
Yeah, they're Yeah, that's why. Anyways, guys, what are we talking about today? Actually, no.
Let's get it going. Yeah, go on.
Let's talk about what we're talking about today, and then mention some other episodes that we enjoyed. All right, what are we talking about today, Bilal?
Well, let's get.
We haven't gotten that much better, boys. In 4 years, it's not that much better.
Yeah. We got a little tariff update. What's been going on? China escalation. The Apple carve-outs, the rare earth exports, that's all to be discussed. Also, Rory McIlroy won the Masters. We're going to talk about the best monkey off the back awards.
Yes.
This is basically anyone, maybe in sports, maybe in music, whatever it might be.
Like a guy that won an Academy Award after decades, right? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Preview to one that I had in there, so that's a good one.
Okay, beautiful. Okay.
And then if we get to it, let's talk about Toby's memo we didn't get to talk about last week. The Shopify founder talked about this AI.
Why don't we wrap that in a full AI thing? Why don't we save that? Because a little inside baseball, people we're going to double record.
We're going to do double next week.
Let's do the Meta one because it's interesting. Meta antitrust.
All right, we've got Meta antitrust. So
Meta.
Should we kick off with tariffs, or is there other memorable moments you got for us, Trunk?
Anything else?
Nick Majuli's episode, I'll say real quick, was a real good one too. Remember Nick Majuli? Nick Majuli.
Oh yeah, Nick. Oh,
he was such a good hang. Obviously, George Mack, all-star guest. He's been
always appreciate
back-to-back bangers as well. But I'd have to think a little bit more. But yeah, what were you going to say?
No, I love Majuli's episode because he, I don't know how many NIAs he had watched in the past, but he got the vibe immediately. Also, give a shout out to Mary Childs. She's a serious journalist. Wrote a capital J journalist book and came out to hang. And with some absolute doofuses and had a good time.
About bonds too, which is very important with what's going on right now. We're going to get to that in the tariffs, yeah.
So I was actually curious, because we've internally said that we actually don't want to do a guest because it's just a different vibe. But also, guests they can bring some fire, man. So
I'm not against guests. I think it just has to be
I don't know.
I think we should have a high threshold for guests that we're all excited to talk to. Bring something unique, gets the vibe. But yeah, I'm definitely up for having some guests once in a while, yeah. But let's get Sailor on part 2.
Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, Jack, anything else on the highlights?
No, boys, let's rip.
All right, let's get going.
Let's get into it.
Trung, let's do a little tariff update. Obviously, we talked about it last week. It was quite funny. I started off the pod saying it's Tuesday, everything's going to change by tomorrow, and that's pretty much everything you said about 20 minutes later pretty much happened the day after. So why don't we just recap what's happened, and then a few of the big parts about China escalation, the Apple carve-outs, where we're kind of at right now.
Yeah, I think our top takeaways were kind of on par. It's the idea of there's way too many goals that are being tried to achieve here, or being said to try and achieve. Reshore manufacturing, take down the debt, equalize trade across 185 countries, and then take on China. I think my takeaway from last week, which was ultimately this will become a China question, really did kind of really crystallize in the past week. I don't know if necessarily that's intention. I think that's just they're trying to throw spaghetti at the wall and seeing it's all real time. Obviously it's all real time, right?
We've heard vibe code, and it feels a little vibe presidency sometimes.
It's
right
vibe governing, right? Which there's
pros and cons to that.
You shake it up a lot, and then you kind of react to it. Which, if your plan was just to F it, this old system's not going to work, and we have zero interest in keeping it, this is kind of the approach you do, which to a lot of people looks absolutely ludicrous. And a quote that we said before the pod was David Brooks, New York Times, said that Trump is the wrong answer to the right question. And I think what he's getting at is Trump directionally diagnoses what other people will not say, right? And the China is the best example. 2016, goes on the campaign trail. Just again, it's the wall and China were his two main points. And since then, total bipartisan consensus in America that China is a geopolitical threat. Like over the past decade, everyone's crystallized to his vision. Then the question becomes, if you're going to do this properly, if you're going to take on a country that has a 5,000 to 6,000 year history and and thinks in 20, 30-year timeframes, that's willing to eat, burn capital, suppress the labor market, deal with internal friction with their populace, and do some quite very authoritarian things, you need to have a game plan. So let me throw that to you guys. Is there anything you guys saw in the past week that made your original estimation of what we said at the end of last week? Because a lot of things did actually happen a week. And the China question specifically, does that feel more crystallized to you where it's like, okay, this looks like it's going to become a USA versus China situation?
I've tuned out of it a bit since last week, since we had that conversation. But I don't know. I can't even remember what the consensus was at the end of our conversation last week, even though I haven't been all over it. But the idea that this was all bundled up in a way to eventually lead to like head-to-head negotiation with China, I think we did say that, no? Or we did, or maybe we missed that.
No, we did say that. Eventually, they're going to let go of they're going to pause the tariffs with the other countries, which they did. They did 90 days.
Yeah.
And then
it's just trying to get leverage on China, basically.
And then people are like, is this actually the best way to do that? That basically becomes the question. Is like, is going after everyone, if your goal is to build a wall around China, is the way that you're doing it the right way to do it? That's kind of where.
And how would you summarize the last week? It just feels like disorganized, or like because I think I still stand by some of what we said last week, which is like part of the strategy is mess. No?
Yeah. Oh, just cause the confusion. Like you're doing. Yeah. You're flipping over.
Not even saying like anybody can predict exactly what's going to happen, but like it seems to me like there's not been an effort to course correct from that strategy, which I think if people thought they were legitimately getting it wrong or it wasn't happening the way they wanted it to happen, maybe you would see different response to it. But I'm like already underqualified to comment on it, and I've like just feel like I'm reading the same tweet 1,000 times at this point. Yeah. So I'm like, you know what?
It's the art of the deal.
I got stuff to do, man. I got work to do.
That's it. No, you're right, Jack. Well, I was chatting to Jack about this before as well, that it feels, I was tuning out as well, because it feels like you're either hearing Trump is bad, economy's crashing, the end of the world on one side, or you're getting, oh, this is such a genius 10D chess, art of the deal, clearly you guys are missing it. Which is probably neither of those completely, right? Like there's a little bit of both in this. And so that's why it's been a little bit tiring I've listened, to be fair, to lots of pods and stuff on it, but it's you kind of, before I'm kind of I'm like filtering through. I'm like, okay, I think this is going to be what they're going to say. And then I listen for about 12 minutes and I'm like, okay, that's pretty much what they're saying.
Yeah.
So I just tune out. But but what about you?
Let me bring some more like longer term things into, other than this, like, hey, it's a 10D chess or it's not 10D chess, right? It's like, if you were to attack, if you wanted the right answer to the right question, like where is that kind of converging to? And I mean, the thing that exactly like you guys said was, so do you guys remember Saturday morning? All these tweets about Tim Cook started rolling out. There are some absolute bang. It's because the night before it looked like America had stepped back or had it looked like they were backing down a bit. And the actual, the headline that hit was that there was a carve out for electronics, which, by the way, so America imports about $400 to $500 billion from China. Computers and
first, Trung, there was a pause, by the way, because after this pod, like there was a pause, obviously, right?
Yeah, there was a pause of
90-day pause.
Tariffs.
Yeah,
90-day pause, minimum 10% stuck. There's some confusion about Canada and Mexico, which had their own situation, but the China ones, 145% is what it got to, which is just it's just comic. Well, here, this is what I mean. This is why, like, when we said on last Tuesday, it's like, it's China, USA, this is what it's coming to. It's because China didn't back down. China's like, all right, we're going to push it to 125. The memes were hysterical. I mean, if we can ask, I'll send Rafa a couple of pull-ups. There was a one of Xi Jinping reading The Art of the Deal, and then Trump reading The Art of War.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
that
there
was
was,
good.
hysterical. And then there was a one of like Xi and Trump looking even older than they are now. They're both in their 70s, but they're looking like they're in their 200s. And then one of them saying 9,000% tariff, the other one saying 8,000% tariff, right? But like, so China, if you thought they were going to back down, they're prepared for this. They've had a decade to prepare for this on top of the 30 years industrial policy that they started in the 90s to prepare for this, right? So this is what they've done. They go back at 125 and then they release, this is actually hysterical. They write, we will no longer do tit for tat tariffs because it's become a joke and it's economically irrelevant. They're just like, it doesn't make a difference at this point. It's like if we hit something at 150 or 200, it doesn't matter, right? It's just like you're going to stop the trade. And they also did carve outs for semiconductors though. So there's like all these carve outs happening. And then Saturday morning, headline hits. The headline is Apple like gets the iPhone carve out and the laptop.
Tim Apple doing his work there. Yeah.
Dude, Geiger Capital, if you guys follow him, had this hysterical tweet. He goes, the photo of Jeff Bezos walking is like Jeff Bezos walking to the White House after seeing Tim Apple get the.
Tim Apple's got to be top 3 things he's ever said.
Unbelievable,
So
right? So then the market reaction to that is like, oh my God, Tim Apple does it again, right? The supply chain guru, the guy that built this $500 billion supply chain in China. And we should actually talk about how Apple is almost singularly responsible for China becoming a manufacturing powerhouse because EVs are effectively smartphones on wheels, right? But you couldn't look at anything China did with Apple individually over the past decade. You're like, oh my God, Tim Cook just sold Apple down the river or America down the river. It's like every step was logical, right? And we should talk about that actually. But then Trump comes over top. He's like, there is no carve out. We're doing a proper reading of the semiconductor exemptions next week. And right now, 20% of tariffs still on phones and electronics. And then Ryan Peterson, Flexport CEO, one of the most watched voices and accounts right now on this is just like, man, this is all you're doing. I have no idea what's going on. I'm telling you what the result is. The final result is this: peer paralysis. If you are an executive in America, you're not doing anything. You're watching your stock eat the shit, and then you're just waiting this out until one person has a single policy. Because, guys, what happened on Sunday? You guys sent me the meme. Jack, Bilal, Howard Lutnick. What did the Commerce Secretary say? Well, you guys sent a meme, right, from Buco Capital. If you guys want to pull it up. But the Commerce Secretary...
get the meme, but then they say that they're gonna review the semiconductor tariffs again.
Right.
In 30 days.
And the electronics, they're like, oh, well, it's actually not a reversal. We're going to make a decision in 60 days. It's just insane. So somebody's just like, for the love of God, can we just let's just have Scott Bessent talk, okay? Let's just have the Treasury Secretary be the single voice on this. The other thing we said last week was watch the internal battle. Bessent and Musk versus Navarro, Peter Navarro, trade czar, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who are much more super pro-tariff trade war. And then it looks like Bessent is kind of winning out. And a lot of it has to do, which we didn't really touch on, was like the bond yields just exploded.
I think it's worth mentioning real quickly, Trump, because
let's do it.
Because the bond yields essentially were going up like 4.5%, right? And so maybe we should explain the significance really quickly, because essentially the stock market was going down. Is your mic come out? All right, yeah.
Go ahead.
Stock market was already going down, and normally bonds kind of equalize, right? Like in your portfolio, you normally have...
Yeah, if you're selling a risk asset like equities,
you're normally
going
to
reallocate
fixed income or
to a
something
safe
like that.
haven.
But
this
that
is a great question.
was also going up because people were selling, and then they need to attract more with a higher yield, I assume, right?
100%. I think it was one of the biggest 3-day moves in yields. So for listeners, here's the CFA hat. And if you live in finance, sorry for boring you, but like the 10-year US Treasury is like the bedrock of the global financial system.
Yeah.
It's what you benchmark everything against, essentially. And the reason, obviously, America is considered this is called the risk-free rate, is because you assume America will A, never default on that, B, their military will make sure that that currency stays on the up and up, and that they force their citizens, ultimately by the barrel of a gun, because the IRS can come arrest you and put your ass in jail if you don't pay taxes, to pay in the US dollar, right? So the assumption then is that with all the underpinning, that is the debt, that is the best fixed income instrument, certainly for a sovereign nation. There are often questions every time they play, like Congress and the executive branch play like the politics around the funding. People are like, "Woo, like what's going on here?" And also the fact that they added 10 trillion to the debt over the past 5 years. So total debt, United States is $36 trillion. They need to refinance about 9 trillion in the next 12 months, I believe. So the question of America, are you a great credit, is being questioned. Like it always gets it frequently goes through these cycles, but now it's like, okay, you're trying to blow up the whole global trade system. Are you a partner that we can have? So back to the yield. It went from 3.9% to 4.5%. Imagine that happening to one of us. How annoyed would you be if you went to try to get a loan and a line of credit at the bank and they told you that they're going to bump you from 3.9 to 4.5? You would be annoyed. But you're an individual without great credit. For the United States of America to be told 3.9% to 4. It is a ginormous move in yield. It's enormous. And like you said, Bilal, typically, especially in market dislocations like this, like what happened after Liberation Day, it's a safe haven asset. When bonds get bought up, if more people are demanding a bond, you get to ask for a lower yield, right? It's because all interest rates is the price of money. It's the price of money, right? And if there's a high demand for something, the price of money, in this case, the yield that they get to charge will go down because there's so much demand for it. They're like, yeah, if you're not going to give us 3.9, this other buyer will, right?
And then Trump, I think what Trump said was, I forgot the phrase he used. He used something like people getting twitchy, or what was the word? Yippity. And so like for people, once you hit 4.5, once it starts creeping up above that, people are getting the confidence starts going, right? And so then you're in trouble, and that would cause a massive issue everywhere.
If the 10-year U.S. Treasury hits 5%, the trade war's over. There's the famous quote that keeps going around. It's from James Carville, the former political strategist for Bill Clinton. He says, if I were to come back and resurrected, at first I thought I wanted to be the president of the United States or a 400 batting average baseball player. He's like, but what I'd actually want to be is bonds, because apparently they can intimidate everyone, right? And like at the end of the day, the bond market does not mess around, because dude, if you see a 50% move in equities, let's bring Jack into this. At this point, with how risk asset friendly the NIA listeners are, and it's like, dude, you see a 30-40% move in a crypto or equity, you're like, whatever, right? You brush it off.
You've been trained by this point.
Exactly. And a guy, even like Besant, watching the markets, he watched $5 trillion get erased, and he's like, it's whatever, it's equities. But as soon as the bonds get a bit yippity, you're questioning the confidence.
Yippity is such a great word.
About the United States of America. So let me finish with this, and I want to pass it to Jack. So two things I want to mention is there's two ways this goes, right? In typical emerging markets, when this happens, like in Argentina, where Bilal spent a lot of time, you either default on the debt, which is it's inconceivable that the United States of America would default on their debt. But people are like, well, it's getting pretty bad, right? That's just like the total nuclear button. The other one that you do is you do some really insane stuff, right? Or like you got to get under control. Is like you got to tax the shit out of your population, and you got to pull all these measures just to secure. Or the Fed, this is what, on Friday, the Fed said we're ready to support equity markets. And what Arthur Hayes, who we've talked about, keeps saying is like, when you hear that, not money investment advice. Jack's doing the money printing. He literally said on Friday, Arthur Hayes, not investment advice. He's like, buy everything. He's like, the Fed just signaled they will support the market. And then this is the whole point. He's like,
Frank, do you know who else said that? Sorry. Well, Trump said it as well, right? We'll get to that as well. Yeah.
Well, dude, we should talk about that. This is becoming
that wasn't Friday, though, was it?
That was a few days before, I thought.
Jack, okay, let's bring Jack in here. I like that we've opened this apart from just the tit for tat. But go ahead, Jack.
What are you asking me? I'm just listening.
I'm asking you.
I'm a student.
About the yield. What are your feelings about it? What's your understanding of it? When you saw that, did you have any particular feelings?
I'm honestly not as clued in as I would like to be, but the idea that the unpredictability of, or the shakiness, the yippitiness of the United States is driving the yield, the price up, right? Their future obligations up.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out, like, if their goal is to get that number down, what actions are they trying to instigate in order to get that number down? And from what I've read, and maybe this is like way far on the zero hedge end of the spectrum, is like,
love it.
You literally, you have to basically break China in some meaningful way, right? Where it's like you become a flight to safety in an environment where your biggest competitor is, the tide goes out and they're naked. Is that a fair
also, I guess,
assertion or assumption?
I guess the pausing of the tariffs also had that effect, no? Trump, but in that...
No, but I'm just saying that just
things
puts
calmed
the
down
conditions
after that,
back where they were, though.
Yeah.
But the conditions just go back to where they were. But if their plan is like, oh, they want the yield like way down.
Right? Okay,
want it
that's what
to 2.5%, 3%. Like that was Besant, right? On air saying he wants that under 3%.
He wants it 3 and under.
Like,
yeah, when they refinance. Okay, Jack, you nailed. You.
So my question is like, my question is, in an ideal universe, what has to happen for that to be reality? Like in my mind, my very rudimentary understanding of finance would say you have to present yourself as a safer option, right?
Yes.
Like the predictability of that economy has to come into focus. And my read on it is like doing something like bombastic in the short term is clearly to produce a black swan or an event that would shift focus back in the direction, because the chaos is not going to do anything for you unless it breaks something that then resets the game entirely.
You're right. You're saying the chaos would be the opposite because you want stability.
Exactly.
But you're saying unless it's going to do something major. I get what you're saying. Okay.
Jack,
like you actually have to have like some concrete happening to flip the market's mentality around it.
Jack, you hit two very good points that I want to touch on. So the first point is a question about using financial muscle. And I want to contrast that with what the 50,000 foot I think is happening with China. China is the manufacturing muscle of the world. A third of manufacturing right now estimated to be 45% by 2030, which is insane. Absolutely insane. Total monopoly on high-end manufacturing, right? Well, not high-end, but like manufacturing, electronics, vehicles, goods, EVs, it's already dominating, solar panels, a lot of the inputs to any device you need. This is the contrast that I think you brought up, which is very interesting. What is America's weapon? It is its financial system. That is America's moat, right? That is ultimately the military, because China's creeping up. It actually has a bigger navy right now. Hasn't been battle tested like America's, hasn't been around the world like America's. And it's much more, whereas America's Navy is what they call a force projection around the globe, China's Navy is very focused on controlling its region of the world, which isn't to say it can't force protect, but it obviously wants to control its region of the world. But putting that aside, you hit on the point. America's weapon right now is financial. It's what they did against Russia when Russia invaded Ukraine. It put the red button. The red button is we're going to freeze the central banks, the assets, and we're going to sanction the shit out of this country. And China's been studying that, right? China, this is what they've been preparing for. They're seeing what's happening to Russia in the event that Taiwan becomes a hot war, which is what's been hanging over all this. So the question that you brought up about, yes, you cause chaos and it's supposed to go to a safe haven asset. And you're right, which is what's so scary for people right now, because it's not reflecting that. In fact, the reaction of the global financial world is to reject American assets. Stock market going down, bond yields going up, which means treasuries are being sold. There's some mechanical stuff involved with the treasuries. And there's a lot of trades that are unwinding that might be somewhat responsible for that. But the other thing that suggests that this might just be a global, hey, we're kind of freaked out by what's going on in America right now, is the US dollar is going down. And again, in times of uncertainty, the US dollar, the three currencies that typically go up in the times of uncertainty the most are the yen, US dollar, and the Swiss franc. Those are seen as havens of stability. right? So to have the stock market, bonds, and dollar all selling off, it's to your point, is like they wanted to create some confusion and instability for people to come to this stability. But what's actually happening is they created that and people are like, we're not too crazy about what's going on right now. We actually don't even know. We need certainty. And let me tie that off and see if that answered any kind of your broader question, Jack. But the sell-off, the 10D chest that was put out by the Trump campaign, or kind of the scuttlebutt, was like, we're going to cause a mini recession and we're going to force the Fed to cut rates. Because remember how you said Besant wanted 3% and under. Well, you do those two things. If you force a mini recession, a little bit of pain, the growth expectations go down. That drives down rates, and then you're going to get a cut from the Fed. So that was a 10D chess kind of move that people thought, but it's actually the opposite's happening. People are like, we don't actually like any of this instability at all. So let me throw the ball back in your court with what you had kind of come out with, if that kind of rhyme, or there's any rhyme or reason to that.
I think so, but I still think that like the result they're trying to produce has not occurred yet, right? And I don't know why people have the expectation that the carnage wouldn't happen in the middle.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and maybe I'm missing something huge here, but it feels like this is like a game of poker, right? No, like people haven't actually showed their cards, or something has to actually break in a market for this to like break in one side's favor or another. Like my like inferred understanding of it is like everyone's can bluff until they can't, right? At a certain point, something breaks, and then like the market makes a decision one way or another, and we're in the like nether zone right now, just in between those outcomes. And it seems to me like, from what I've listened to on Besant's side, is like there's some high degree of confidence that they can continue on this path until something breaks and makes America look like more of an attractive long-term capital guarantor, whatever you want to call that. And that's like just my read or understanding of it. And without the chaos, that is never gonna, like, that result could never be forced. Now, they may not be correct that is the result that will happen, but to like for the market to say, I want that result without volatility, it's just, that to me is like it's an oxymoron, right? It's like the change is not going to happen without the significant degree of disruption.
I think your second last sentence kind of nailed it, Bilal. Let me just
I'll go for it.
Top off on Jackson, and I'll hop over to you quickly. It's like, yeah, Jack, what you said there is like, I agree with you. I think they wanted to cause the chaos, but they're not getting the reaction they wanted. I think that's the key. The yield is clearly demonstrated.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So, Bilal?
To that point, I agree, but I think the point is there's been, what they've communicated is multiple things, right? That we've talked about onshoring manufacturing, creating jobs, raising money through tariffs. Also, this kind of 10D chess play about breaking China in some way. Like, there's so many competing goals, essentially. And I think, and I agree with what you're saying. Like, if someone was playing 10D chess in reality, like, that's going to take time, and maybe we'll see that in some time. But the other side would say, well, actually, no, they're trying to do too many things, and they're playing with fire, and the fire was setting off, and they had to back off because what they thought would occur didn't happen. And specifically with the bond, and I think the timing of the pause specifically seemed to be straight after. Even Trump talked about seeing he was watching like Fox News. Jamie Dimon was getting.
Was about the yield.
Exactly. And it makes sense, right? Like, he's watching Fox News every day. Like, we know that. And, Besant comes from this world. He's not like some random outsider. All his boys are probably like, yo, what the hell is going on here, son?
They were hitting him up. He's like, yo, you got hundreds of texts. Just like,
I could imagine that, So, anyway, time will tell. But it's been Yeah, the only other couple things I wanted to mention is just looking at the S&P, which has normally been, like you said before, NIA listeners are very used to 30 to 50% drawdowns, even 80% of, since we've done this pod, right? Like if you were involved with crypto, you've seen 80% drawdowns
BTC
in like
went
major.
from max was 70 to 17.
Exactly.
So what is that? That's about 70%
and
plus.
The time before that it went from 20K to 1 or like something like that. Maybe I can't remember if it went to
95%, yeah.
Exactly. And so we've seen that's with Bitcoin. That's not even the shit coins, right? Like we've seen a lot. We've seen 99.9% on.
Wait, Bilal, what about the 100 to 0? What about that one? We've seen a lot of those.
Well, yeah, we've seen
that's pretty close.
Anchor, all jokes aside, we've seen all of that. But the interesting thing is S&P doesn't normally have this amount of volatility, right? Like there are big drawdown days, but if you look at the biggest drawdown days and then the biggest increases, we just saw it, right? Like it was a massive drop, and then the best day in history, right? Meaning like in terms of $1 trillion added or whatever.
Well, can you give more details on that? Is like
it dropped so much.
We had the biggest day ever.
Exactly, and it was because we also had one of the worst days ever, or two of the worst days ever. And it is interesting that I think someone tweeted out like the worst percentage days of like, let's say the S&P going back like 100 years. And I think 3 of them have been since 2020. So, we saw
the
those
worst
2
3
days
runs because of COVID.
Now, obviously there is a percentage. There's a difference between actual just straight up value decreasing and percentage, right? So obviously if a house is worth $2 million and it goes down 10%, that's a greater nominal amount than a house that's worth 100 grand going down 10%. So
absolute versus relative,
absolute versus relative, exactly. So I think that was quite interesting just to see the S&P even kind of behaving like that. And I think it's kind of a glimpse into kind of where we're going. Is we're going to see more and more of this volatility. We've talked about in the pod before about the gambling nature of everything right now, and the fact that everyone's just getting more and more used to these ups and downs at this scale. Maybe I'm looking into that too much, but I do think that was interesting just to see that ride up and down so much. And then the other thing is there are a lot of people, obviously there's calls from the left right now saying to investigate insider trading because there was some option trades that looked a little bit dodgy. Again, who knows what the hell's going on there. But that is also something that will be kind of investigated in due time as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a wild run. Is there anything else on that trunk? We didn't really talk about rare earths, but I think that's quite an important one as well.
hit that. Let me wrap those off the tip for tap where we're at. And the thing I'll say about the yields that I didn't fully say was like, is it just countries dumping? Because I'll tell you the mechanical part of the trade is this. Bilal, we had that, what you just said, 15%? Biggest 3-day move since Black Monday, something crazy, right? For S&P.
Yeah.
So when that thing happens, some hedge funds are going to get blown up, which is what we talked about last week. Traders putting on trades are going to get blown up, and a lot of trades that do end up involving treasuries, and or people have to sell treasuries to make themselves whole on margin calls, right? So some people have identified that there are a lot of big Japanese traders on this, what they call the basis trade. We don't have to get into it, but either Japanese traders or global traders trying to get in on a basis trade, which involves treasuries and futures. The TLDR is this: with the amount of shit that was going on in the markets, those trades were blown up and people had to sell treasuries. So it wasn't just, hey man, this thing's getting crazy in America, let's just dump everything. Because as of this morning, it looks like treasuries are back 10 years at 4.3%. But I'm with Bilal here. I just want to make it clear. It's like, I don't think this is 10D chess. It's way too crazy. I think the larger there's intention, I think they want the craziness, but they're also being reactive to the signal. And this is why you need Besson, I think, at the wheel. It's like, this is his wheelhouse, right? And yeah, I mean, it could end, they're making a big play, right? It could end completely badly for them. And they're making a play to isolate. It's not the most tactical thing. So I'll give you an example about the tariffs that with Apple. So people looked at the tariffs and they're just like reading the document that, hold on a second. So you're lowering the tariffs on the imported final good, so the iPhone, but you're keeping the tariff at 145% for all the electrical components that you would need to manufacture it within America, right? So the battery itself is still 145%. The finished iPhone's at 20%. What are you incentivizing? You're incentivizing China to keep manufacturing everything. So none of this is making sense.
Yeah.
They need to get Trump back out in the Rose Garden with a giant piece of thing. And like, that needs to be the fine. He's like, okay, this is it. We're done. This is what we're going to do for the rest of 2025. Here's how it's going to go. We're going to stagger the rollouts on tariffs. Here are what each country is. That's the problem right now. It's like what you guys have all identified. First, too many goals, first of all. So if the goal is ultimately just to try to box China in, and China's not going to be just cool with this. They hit back with the rare earth. That's not a small thing. China, the thing about rare earths, they're not rare. You can find them in other places. Australia, they're in America. The rare part about rare earths is that to actually like the production process involves a lot of industrial processing. Yeah, it's like
specialist
giant vats of chemicals.
Which China is very good at, obviously.
High polluting. Yeah. So they produce 98% of these rare earths because they have it in production. So read in The Economist, it would take 2 to 3 years for America, starting now, to overtake China.
Just in time for the next election run.
Yeah,
right?
just in time. So it would take 2 to 3 years from right now. But if China, which produces 98% of these things, 90% plus, these things are used in batteries, wind power, a lot of electric vehicle components. If you shut that down, that's a big problem. And then they cut off Boeing, but that's not the big deal. They only had 10 ships coming. But the point is they have weapons. China has weapons they can use. They've been preparing for this. And all I'm saying, you got to get way more focused if this is the goal. So I'll wrap with that.
Last question. Have you guys spoken to anyone who does e-com recently? I know there's people listening to the pod who have e-com bits. Yeah. Jack, what have they been saying? Because I heard some crazy, like one guy I heard one guy had done like $1 million shipment that was ordered before Trump was in office even. And it was like months ago. It's on a ship, the slow ship. And that's $1 million, right?
So that's
it's been going for a while. But man, could you imagine that's coming to the port and you owe 145%? So I don't know the logistics. Is that literally you're going to get hit with a $1.4 million tariff? Because if that's the case, who's just got $1.4 million sitting around?
I'm actually confused about that. Is it when you leave China's port or when you arrive?
I think when
I mean this particular tariff. That's what I'm curious about.
I'm not sure.
I think it's when you leave the port. So if you left after April 9th, but
that's wild, right?
Ships are leaving after April 9th and they're slow.
Have I ever told you boys when I imported stuff from China and Vietnam and I got hit with a 3x price increase when it hit the UK?
Was this a Bing Bing Empire?
Yeah, it was Street Vibes, but I had ordered a bunch of sneakers, basically like sneak trainers, and whatever the price they put on the thing, it came to my door. I was ready to sell everything looking good, triple the price, because I'd done it a few times and it was completely fine. But the way they had labeled it or something, they'd put like the retail price and they would charge a tariff on the retail price. Whatever it was, my cost went up 3x. And I literally think it's still sitting in my parents' attic right now. Like I just never saw, I was like, man, out of principle, I'm just never selling these again. And I lost the money basically. But yeah, you got to take the L sometimes. Lesson learned. Jack, you said you spoke to some people on this? I know you do.
I know people that have like,
small,
like maybe components or ingredients that come from China that like maybe they're assembled in the UK. And you guys know Represent, George Heaton, that British streetwear brand. He made a great tweet yesterday. He said, I didn't catch this much on Twitter, but there was this maybe it started on TikTok of like Chinese manufacturers of luxury goods that are then shipped
it's becoming a huge trend. Yeah. This is a great topic.
They'll make a bag in China and then they'll stitch I don't want to slander any brands here, but they'll stitch a well-known made in Italy label into that product and then ship it on to wherever it's going. And they've been doing that in, actually went to uni with a guy who was beef, like his dad has a farm, they produce beef, and Aberdeen Angus beef can grow up and live wherever wherever it lives, and it's finished. If it's finished in Aberdeen or wherever, they can give it that label. And so much of global trade is like insane, man. I remember this documentary, it's BBC, I think it was, like years ago, saying that like apples would be picked in like an orchard in the UK, and then they would go to Japan to be like glazed or something, and then sent somewhere else. Like, what are you guys doing?
That's pretty mental.
Like, so much of this shit is so like insanely illogical, and I think also like some of the political ammo that will come positively from this is stuff like, hey, there's this guy that imports, you know, pillows from China and then like marks them up 20 times and then sells them to whoever as a Shopify website.
Yeah.
It's like, should that be a business? Should that be a moat? Should human capital be spending their time like branding pillows and shipping them 7,000 miles across the world? I think there are like incentives beyond that, like, again, beyond my comprehension of like trade is like this vector for world peace, right? Like the ability to trade between nations. A lot of the things to be considered there are like, maybe they don't make direct economic sense, but they create an environment of like mutual trust and like reliance, and there's an argument to be made for that. But there's definitely like very economically illogical things happening, and the like ability to manipulate currency always comes back to the same thing, boys. The ability to print money,
yes,
is a lot of the, you know, the nefarious incentives that exist underneath these systems that don't show up until 10 years later, 20 years later, whatever it might be. And then the question just becomes like, can you put that back in the bottle? Like, can you reorient the course of a entire nation and the things that people learn? And like when we were at university, it did not occur to me to study engineering, to build factories, because like that was not like such a niche opportunity, or not even a comprehensible opportunity that wasn't even in my set of considerations. Whereas my dad, I think, did like college as an engineer, fixed aircraft his whole career, and then like pharmaceutical machines, and like the incentives when we were university age was like, go and study marketing, be a graphic designer, do a psychology degree. Like this whole generation of people have oriented their skill set around what the country is, you know,
focused on or whatever.
Focused
Well,
on,
like
or what the economic
yeah.
incentives are at the time. Yeah, go build a SaaS company, try and build another Facebook.
It's a services-based economy, right? And it's like, Jack, it's like we were joking about it last week. You want to know why no one's going to screw screws into iPhones in America? Is because you can make double that posting tweets or making TikTok videos.
Right,
it's like,
right.
What are you going to do, right? And Jack, I love that you brought up, actually, this is great for you to bring up the luxury thing. Look at this. So for the listeners, it's a year-to-date stock chart for Hermes, Louis Vuitton, and Kering. Hermes is up 2.3%. Louis Vuitton and Kering are down 20 and 30%. And the point I'm trying to make here is I buy a lot of that massive trend. It's crazy. But it speaks, what is luxury, right? Luxury is the number one rule of luxury, or there's two number one rules. The first kind of number one rule is like, you want more people knowing about a brand that can buy it. That creates value and demand. The other rule is you have to be locked to a location, right? Hermes produces, I think, 60 to 70% in-house, and they do it with ateliers in France. And I really doubt that Hermes has any Chinese factories. They say they don't. I do not think they do. And the whole point is you can't be luxury if you're building somewhere else. Jax, like we talked about with Ferrari. Ferrari will never create a single vehicle in China. Never. Because that will destroy the brand. And the difference with Kering and LVMH versus Hermes is one brand. LVMH and Kering have a house of brands, right? Like Kering has Dior and Louis Vuitton. Oh, no, sorry. LVMH has Dior, Louis Vuitton. Kering has Yves Saint Laurent and Gucci. So some of them maybe certainly be going to China. But I think what you brought up is this: is like the part of it that doesn't make sense to me is that, oh, you can buy this luxury good from China, but that's besides the point, right? Like there's that famous video from 10 years ago of Banksy. Banksy was selling his street art in New York. It wasn't him, it was some random dude. No one bought anything. The entire point about luxury is this story. That's the entire point, right?
And I think that's also
and the craftsmanship,
a function of manufacturing getting so good too. Like the idea that at a certain point these things flipped, right? The handmade handbag was of a higher quality than the mass-produced handbag, and now the infrastructure that exists to produce objects is so incredible.
It's close.
That the handmade one is imperfect. No, I would say they're better. Like you can make a better.
Like technically a better bag. Like technically,
right? Like exactly. And that's like that is an interesting decision to make. Like where you stand as a brand on that, right? You want to pay people to hand make your stuff in Italy and go all in on that, or you want to, like, you know, if you're a publicly traded company, do you want to excuse the like crude metaphor, just like milk this shit as fat, like as much as you can,
extract,
right? Like the idea
was it max extract?
TBH fellas, we're trying to match extract on this one. Yeah, that becomes like a fiscal responsibility at a certain point too. So it's all downstream of the incentives, and I don't know. I like it's kind of fascinating to watch because so much of it is it's all like a byproduct of weird laws and agreements and myth as opposed to economic reality, right? These things have just now become so embedded, and I find that like that tweet about stitching the made in Italy thing on the product. How are you going to have like diligence into that entire supply chain as even like the ports and the importing? And didn't they this is maybe a separate point, but wasn't there something that happened around the like an agreement to not automate the ports or to not add a certain amount of technology to ports in America?
Yeah, in America, the unions won out. Yeah.
Which is another like, how are you going to enforce all this stuff? Like, if you're going to...
No, but Jack, there is a way to enforce it. Ferrari will never produce a car outside of that factory, right? Hermes will never produce a bag outside of the ateliers in around Paris. That's it. That's why Hermes is holding strong. That's why Ferrari is holding strong. It speaks to...
They're still coming to America on a boat, though, is my point.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Well, I mean, they need to control that supply. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the trust is in the brand. And if it breaks,
I think
then
clearly, yeah. But that's the problem. I think we looked at that stock chart with LVMH and Kering. They have too many brands. A lot of them are targeting different income brackets. But I mean, Hermes and Ferrari are so unique, right? It's like they are one of ones. It's like, but that's the problem. Is like the problem with status and luxury. There can only be one top. That's the entire point. And that's why when I saw the Hermes bag Chinese thing, I brushed it off. I'm like, I believe everything else Hermes won. I do not believe. It's like, it's just Hermes they're killing themselves. If Ferrari manufactured a single car in China, their brand would go to zero. If they manufactured a single car in China, the brand would go to zero. No, but that's just.
I think the other thing, trying to be fair,
great, yeah.
LVMH thing is. I think their drop was actually starting before all this happened, to be fair.
Yeah, it's a lot of recession stuff.
No, even before that, though, I think they missed their earnings, like in Q1.
Okay.
And then on top of that, a lot of the demand for luxury is coming from China, like the growing middle class. And so a lot of, like, even when I worked on it like 10 years ago, the biggest growth was coming from China, basically, and the Asian market,
it went from
Japan.
0 to 33% of revenue, I think, in like 15 years.
Yeah.
But here's a question for you guys. This is interesting. I love that we brought this up. I still believe that the Chinese are going to want to buy the European brands because it is still status. They don't want a bag that anybody else on the street in China can own.
But if there's if there's a fear of a global recession, then that demand goes down, right? So that's
more of a pullback versus a brand damage, right? It's more of a spending pullback. And actually, Bilal, you brought up. I love that you brought up the LVMH point because they're actually Hermes partnered with local manufacturers to launch a Chinese brand. So very interesting thing happened in Chinese luxury. So the most famous. So let's just take Hermes as the iconic, most famous fashion luxury house in the world, right? And then let's take Ferrari, which we talked about a couple episodes ago. These places, they have the unbroken history. I think in 1837 was Thierry Hermes' first saddle stitch for Napoleon III. That's the other key. These luxury brands all developed things for the royal families at that time. Rolls-Royce created vehicles, drove around the royal family, right? It's like you could raise
And
$1
Rick
trillion,
Ross, don't forget
and you
Rick
couldn't.
Ross.
Yeah, and Rick Ross. You could not create that, right? Like, there's no amount of money that you can create. You can't build a time machine with $1 trillion and fly back and start a brand that made something for Napoleon III.
Yeah, that's
right?
influencer marketing on steroids,
Right.
Trung, you know what I mean?
Bro,
You
there
can't-
it is, right? But so China is interesting. They have a problem with luxury. China has a 5,000-year history. Beautiful Chinese art, beautiful Chinese porcelain, beautiful Chinese fabrics, right? What happened during the 60s? They had the Cultural Revolution. Mao Zedong literally wanted to destroy the link with the past. That was his entire thing. It was like, we're rebuilding China, but we want to destroy a lot of the link to ancient China. I mean, he did it for real reasons, because they like, a lot of it was just out of control, the Cultural Revolution. But a lot of it was like, if you can destroy the past, and you can basically just rewrite history yourself, right? So China, actually, that's why you'd expect, wow, why doesn't China have like a brand that's stretched for thousands of years, right? And that's a big part of it. They also industrialized later. A lot of these European brands, they all came about in the 1800s, because that's when industrialization happened. And so the industrialization, I'll end with this. The industrialization of Europe in the 1800s created the conditions for luxury brands, because A, it created the technology to manufacture at scale, and B, it destroyed the royal families. It helped to destroy the royal families that had dominated for hundreds of years. So you just you needed new ways to create status, and this is how these brands came up. So, anyways, this is
Especially French, because of the French Revolution, I guess, right?
Exactly.
Against the royal family.
You nailed it.
Whereas the UK, we still got the royal family, but
Yeah.
they'll be rocking a little Burberry or whatever once in a while.
They're repping the roles. Well, here's the problem with Burberry. Bring a Burberry. Burberry started moving manufacturing to China. It lost its allure.
Jack, do you remember this early 2000s?
How
I mean,
big
was
of
it
a
here as
mistake
well
is that?
with the Chav stuff? Do you remember
Oh,
this,
yeah,
Jack?
of course. Of course.
Trung, I don't know what it was like here in North America, but there was a lot of copycat stuff, and it was basically fake stuff with the Burberry plaid, and they would wear the hats and the trainers and stuff like that. But they did really turn it around, to be fair, after that. Yeah, MC Grinder, exactly, yeah. But no, I mean, very interesting. The luxury stuff is, I'm glad we got to talk
was
about
great.
that.
That's
Very
great.
interesting.
That was really good. That was really good.
We could probably
There's your
tangent.
tariff. There's your tariff leverage right there. 9,000% tariffs on handbags and Ferrari.
Hold on. Let me quote you how hard. So this is Axel Dumas, the CEO and chairman of Hermes. They asked him in February, "Hey, America is gonna hit Europe with tariffs. Are you concerned?" Dude, his answer is so savage. This is what he said. He says, "We'll increase prices, and our American customers will understand."
Yo, that's funny.
Mate, they're opening at Hermes in Nashville. How crazy is that?
There you go.
They know where they're smart. Let me
it.
you know what? Let me hit you guys with one more Hermes quote. So I love that we went down this alleyway. So Hermes is currently involved in an antitrust trial. And it's because there's something in antitrust known as tying, which is when you force someone to buy one item to get another. So you guys probably know with Hermes, you can't just walk into a store and buy a Birkin bag. You gotta move up the buying ladder, right? So first you buy a pair of sandals, and they'll put you in the system. And the lady your sales associate, your SA, I know all these terms because my wife's in a bunch of Hermes buying groups. Your SA will be like, "Hey, I'll call you when a Birkin's available. I don't know when, I'll call you." So now you're in the system. A couple buyers in California are saying that they're breaking antitrust laws. They're forcing you to buy something to buy a Birkin bag. Hermes is like, "No, that's not what's happening. We're actually just controlling supply," right? It's like, well, these are handcrafted. They take 25 hours each, and we have to train somebody for 2 years just to make it. this is how it is, right? So they're saying that, but I'll tell you what's funny. They had in December, the creative director for Hermes, Pierre Alexis Dumas, cousin of the CEO, 6th generation from the founder of Hermes. This is the other thing. 6 generations in, people. You can't cook this up overnight. There's no amount of money a startup could do to have this history, right? This is what he said. He has 2 quotes. I'm going to read them out to you and I'll get you guys' thoughts and we can probably wrap up after this. I got to actually boogie. Here's the first quote. I love your guys' thoughts. He says, speed is the structuring value of the 20th century. We went from horse carriages to the internet. Are we going to be so obsessed with speed and immediate satisfaction? Maybe not. Maybe there's another form of relation to the world, which is linked to patience. To take the time of making things right, you cannot compress at one point without compromising quality. You cannot compress time without compromising quality. Thoughts on that quote? Goes pretty hard.
Banger.
And I got one more for you guys.
Banger.
Jack, that seems something you'd be into.
This is the Hermes guy.
Yeah, the CEO of creative director of Hermes.
Old matey's friend.
Jack just threw it off.
Well, I think that I don't know. I think there's some myth making going on there too. Like I think you could make arguments that is not true in like making garments, like and maybe quality is a subjective thing, right? If somebody sat there and made the thing with their hands, that may have a more qualitative quality to it to a certain consumer. But I feel like the bigger point about like you can't rush the story, 200 years of history, things that are great take time to come into being. I buy that 100%. It's just on the making of stuff, that's also part of what's being sold is the story, right? It's like these watches you make in Geneva. There's a guy sitting there for 3 months coming into work, working on your watch. So when you pay $250,000 for it, you don't feel like a complete tit. It didn't just go through a machine in 15 minutes. Right?
You don't feel like
it helps you justify.
Also, you get told it's a store of value as well, isn't it? There you go.
Exactly.
I got a quote for you. Let me hit this, and I want Bilal's thoughts on both. Here's a second quote from the 60 Minutes in December when they're denying the antitrust claims. Pierre Alexis Dumas, creative director of Hermes, was asked, "Man, isn't Hermes expensive? Isn't it so costly?" And this is his answer. He goes, "I've always heard that Hermes is costly. It's not expensive." He's like, "That's right. It's costly. The cost is the actual price of making an object properly with the required level of attention so that you have an object of quality. Expensive is a product which is not delivering what it's supposed to deliver, but you've paid quite a large amount of money for it, and then it betrays you. That's expensive." So this, you're right.
Buy cheap, buy twice.
Yeah. Buy cheap,
buy twice.
Wow. It's not expensive. It's costly. Good things are costly. It's not expensive.
Consumer surplus there in economic terms. No, I mean, obviously a very good market, which to me, all these guys, they're pretty good craft. They're craftsmen, but they're also the best storytellers. And that's, like when you look at a company, you're like, what sort of business is this? Like Salesforce? Yeah, it's a tech company, but it's a sales company. It's like it's about the sales team. An agency is a sales company. Like you got Apple product company, marketing company. Like these guys, they're master storytellers. You know what I mean? So that's what I think about that. Yo, have you got three? Go on, Jack.
I was just going to say one other thing. I have a friend, a sales guy, a friend of mine who used to run a bar in Brooklyn. And he used to have this saying. He said, the margin is in the story.
That's a banger.
So whenever he was recommending booze, he's like, you could buy whatever tequila, Patron, or whatever the most expensive tequila is. But if I could tell you a good story about this, family-made bottle of tequila that cost the business half as much as the Patron does, everybody's a winner, mate.
Yeah, I love that line. That's very good.
Margins in the and Apple and Story is obviously doing a lot of lifting there, but there's a lot of truth in that.
100%. Yo, but have you guys both got a bounce, or do you want to do a quick fire round on the best comebacks, or how you doing for time?
Oh yeah, let's do that quickly.
Let's just do so. Rory McIlroy won the Masters. I'm not a massive golf fan, but respect. 11-year drought. Let's talk about, just if you've got any off the top of your head, the best monkey off your back awards. Basically, someone who hasn't won something for a long time
You go
came back.
first.
Well, I think you mentioned it earlier. I'll just say Leonardo DiCaprio finally winning an Oscar. You know, because what was it? He was nominated 5 times. We've all watched Wolf of Wall Street. Like, how many could he won?
And he was like the most famous guy in Hollywood for 30 years, right?
How many
just
bangers? Catch Me If You Can.
Bangers and banging everything that moved.
Jeez.
So there's...
Jeez. Yes, sir.
Dude, the numbers... I'm more interested in his other numbers, if you know what I'm saying.
There we go. Yeah, so he got 2016, he won it for the Revenant. I thought that was a nice one. Obviously not sports. I'll just say one more bonus. Andy Murray finally winning Wimbledon as a Brit. 77 years since a British man won Wimbledon.
That was massive. That was massive, dude. So he became a legend, even though he only won like 3 majors.
Because he was in so many like finals and just didn't win. And obviously
he kept losing out to Federer, Jokic,
Federer, Nadal, like insane.
He was a fourth wheel.
Yeah, and in most eras he would be up there, right? But like the fact he was in this golden era, respect to do it on home turf. That's respect.
Butcher.
Any you guys thinking of?
I'm trying to. This is not one, but for whatever reason, what came to mind was Adam Sandler, Uncut Gems.
Oh,
but it's more of just like a big pivot and be like taken
seriously,
more seriously, or like being able to change your relationship with your career in a significant way.
I like
Great
that
film.
I would actually say his Punch Drunk Love was the other one where he did a very similar thing. They're like, this guy's not a serious actor.
I don't know.
Check it. Punch Drunk Love is a movie where, do you guys remember the dude? It's Paul Thomas Anderson. The guy figured out how to scam a yogurt competition. Like if you bought enough yogurts, you get all these free air travel rewards. You might have seen it. Anyways, I love that example.
Crazy premise for a film.
For a film. But it's a true story.
Nice.
I'll leave with this. I love that he brought it back. So what I'll say about more Rory McIlroy, which I love. I actually spent last night just rewatching all his things. Is like the backstory. You guys probably
is the McIlroy. Sorry, we gotta get the Jack laugh in there because Trunk's got the best pronunciation of the Canadian.
Well, how is it supposed to be do?
No, it's not. It's not that. It's incorrect. God, Jack, how would you say Rory
McIlroy?
I love it.
So Canadian. But no, the thing that went viral was this snippet about his coming up as a young kid. I mean, both of his parents worked 100-hour weeks. At 3 years old, McIlroy was seen at a driving range, and somebody just basically told his dad, like, yo, your son's like kind of a natural. And worked at a bar, total white-collar work his mom did, worked at a 3M factory. They never saw each other, the parents. She would take care of him at the day. When the dad came home, she would go work. And they'd put all that money into training him. And then when he hit the majors, 2009, got money. He bought his parents' house. He's like, thank you I can never thank you, but like I never want you to have to work again. Just like very emotional. But yeah, Masters. He was seen as the next Tiger Woods. He wanted to become Tiger Woods and play golf after he watched Woods, a 21-year-old Tiger Woods at the 1997 Masters, one of the greatest performances in golf history. Set a record at so the Masters is the top of the Grand Slam courses. The British Open, the US Open. It's the number one. It's the Wimbledon of golf. Tiger Woods rolls in, unranked. Stanford, a student, destroys the competition and made a whole generation of kids want to play golf.
How old was he then, do you know?
21. Jeez. Insane. So
incredible documentary, by the way, as well, the Tiger Woods one.
The Tiger Woods, it's amazing. I've seen that one. Good. It's amazing. Yeah. But so amazing story for Rory. 11 years since his last Grand Slam. Everyone thought he was the next one. 4 under the age of 25. They thought he was going to win 10. 11-year drought. And he had never won a Masters. He lost final day in 2011. He was up 4 strokes. Blew it. Total meltdown. That's what happened on Sunday. Everybody thought there'd be meltdown. Man, the memes that came out, though, that one video of him walking, like, you guys saw those memes? John Rich had a great one. It's like when the girl texts you, come over.
The best one I saw. The best one I saw was a guy wrote, "When you're finally done with bedtime with two boys under 5."
Yeah, with 2 5-years old.
Incredible.
You are. All right, here, let me wrap up with mine. I go easy one is LeBron winning against the Golden State Warriors 2016, coming back down from 3-1, winning one for Cleveland. That was the last time I really cared about sports, but beautiful people.
So Trung, real quick, wasn't Tiger Woods come back as well? Because what was it, 2019?
Oh yeah, he won 2019.
That was
at the
also
Masters,
11-year drought, I think. After all the scandals as well, he had. I know you just mentioned that. Were you saying that was the same 11? When you said 11 years, were you talking about him or McIlroy?
McIlroy.
Okay. So I think his one as well. After all the crazy stuff he got into. Anyway, great one, boys. Congrats on hitting the 4 years. Thanks for everyone listening for all the support, and we got lots more coming for you. Hope to see you guys next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Peace out.